there. I teach English, and I've used atonement in my class. This is now the third time. And inevitably, some student asks, and it's lovely because it's uninvited, that moment when Briony is, and I always say her name incorrectly,
Bryony.
She's looking at her hand,
yeah,
and it's this meditation, her meditation on consciousness of what it means to have her brain and how it's working. And someone always asks, how did he do that? How did he know about this? This was my experience. How did he know to write this? And they're floored by it.
That's because they all did it too. I mean, so that's how I did it. I mean, in other words, if you're writing straightforwardly enough and you tap into something that you think is important to you, there's always a good chance that it will have a universal ring. And I remember staring at my hand in just that way, around about the age of 11. And I can track 3 or 4 moments through childhood like this, and I think we all have them. And it's part of a fully developed consciousness coming into being. I had one at the age of 7. I've never written this down. I've never used it, but one day I will. I was at a new school. My father was in the army, and we travelled around a lot. And it was a school in England. We'd been abroad, we'd come back. A primary school. I was 7 years old. I was standing in the playground, and I thought, I'm now going to make myself remember this moment for the rest of my life. It is Monday. I am me. I'm holding onto the railing by this playground. And I promise to myself, I will remember this. Now, I don't know. I've read quite a lot of neuroscience and about the laying down of memories. Am I really remembering, or am I just remembering my remembering of this? It doesn't matter. It lives. And I think of that as a moment of coming to self-awareness. And so the fact that your students relate intensely to this moment suggests to me that as we come out of this cloud of unknowingness of childhood into consciousness, could be 3, 4, 7, 11, and then intensely with adolescence, there are these step-ups in the sense of being a self that's not another self, a self that, and then, of course, by extension, that other people feel just as real, which is another difficulty for Bryony. Either you're surrounded by automata and you're the only bright, living consciousness in the world, which is somewhat implausible, or everyone else is just the same. They all think they're special. They all have a self. And that is overwhelming. And that's one of those lessons, I think, that one has. So I'm glad that this passage has now been, I'm very honored that it now appears in papers on either on child development or in neuropsychology. And I get this request, may we quote this passage? And I always want to write back, please quote it. I'm so deeply honored, and I write back, yes, of course.
Question over there.
Bueno, yo sí voy a hablar en español. Yo quería, a mí me sorprendió muchísimo que usted planifique totalmente el tema de cómo inicia la novela y cómo la termina, es decir, cuántas páginas se va a gastar o cuántas palabras se va a gastar haciendo una novela. Y dice además que eso le da libertad, porque lo que pasa es que cuando uno escribe siente que inicia, pero no sabe cuándo va a terminar. Siente que yo pienso que todo escritor necesita como la libertad para ir avanzando, y a la medida que va avanzando, pues va entrando en el tema y luego ya no sabe cuándo va a terminar y de pronto ya encontró el final. Pero me extraña pues su forma de planificar una novela. No sé qué me pueda decir al respecto, porque Yo pensaría que en lugar de sentir libertad cuando lo planifica todo, está más bien como limitado. Además, quiero pedirle otro favor.
I got it. No, in fact, it's a very interesting matter. I don't plan. My simple piece of arithmetic is structural. I don't necessarily know, often I know nothing about what's going inside that space. Just as you take your tennis racket out of its case, you don't know how the game is going to go. You might think you're going to win, but you could never, however many tennis games you've played in your life, you could play for 1 billion years. You would never play the same game again, and you can never predict it. So I'm chaotic in all senses but this one. I need, for my own purposes, to know the shape. The sense that I could just write on and on and on until I felt I'd finished would fill me with horror. I like that structure. All writers have their own ways. I do not prescribe this to you. Remember that. Do not try this at home. When I started Atonement, I thought I was writing a science fiction novel set 3 centuries ahead, in which the upper classes decided they wanted to live in country houses like the 18th century English gentry, and only the working classes had all the technology. Technology was considered vulgar. And my character, Robbie, the gardener, actually had an implant in his head that connected him to the internet. And I was going to write the love story between this upper-class girl who had no technology in her life and the gardener. I realized within 2 days that this was unbelievably stupid.
Last question just here.
Yes, thank you. And then I can understand your answer to the English professor, but the same answer doesn't apply to frigidity. I mean, in the book where you describe frigidity without using any medical terms, without using any psychiatric or anything, how do you manage to get that so clear? I mean, well, it's a woman and it's...
For a start, I hate that word. I mean, I'd never use that word.
Exactly.
I think that's a word that should just... I think it has fallen out of use. Maybe it certainly has in England, in English. Frigid, you never hear. You might call someone, say they had a social manner that was frigid. But to talk in sexual terms of a woman as frigid, I'm very pleased I never hear that term. I think it's insulting and crude, crude. But how to get inside it? But that's the job, isn't it? I mean, that is the job.
Ian, I'm sorry, we're out of time. If you would like to ask Ian anything else, he will be signing books, I believe. May you all miss many flights on his behalf. Ian McEwan, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.